Elijah McCade found her at midnight. A child 8 years old collapsed against his gate in a blizzard that had already killed 2 men that week. Her lips were blue, her fingers were white, and when he lifted her, she weighed nothing at all. "Please," she whispered, "just one night. I won't be any trouble." He carried her inside. By morning, he'd make a decision that would turn the whole town against him. By Valentine's Day, he'd be fighting for her life in a courtroom. And by spring, everything he believed about family would be proven wrong. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to our channel. Follow this story to the very end and comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The gate was frozen shut. Eli McCade slammed his shoulder against it twice before the ice cracked. His horse stamped and snorted behind him, breath coming in white clouds. January 1887. Montana Territory and the cold had teeth tonight. He'd been in town for supplies, stayed too long at the feed store arguing with Henderson about grain prices. Now the blizzard was eating the world alive, and he had 200 yards between himself and his front door. That's when he saw the shape by the fence post. Small. Still. Half buried in snow. Eli stopped. His hand went to his rifle by instinct. Wolves had been bold this winter, but wolves didn't wear dresses. He moved closer. A child. A little girl curled against the fence like she'd been trying to climb it and given up halfway. Her coat was thin, her boots had holes. She wasn't moving. "Hey!" Eli dropped to one knee, brushed snow from her face. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. Blue-green too bright. Fever bright. "Mister?" Her voice was barely there. "I'm sick. I can't walk no more. Can I stay one night?" Eli's chest tightened. He looked at his house, warm light in the windows. Looked at the storm swallowing everything. Looked at the child who weighed less than a saddle when he lifted her. "You're staying," he said. He carried her through the blizzard. Miguel met him at the door, already reaching for the bundle in his arms. "Dios mío, boss." "Where'd she come from?" "Found her at the gate. Get blankets. Hot water. Now." They moved fast. Eli stripped off her frozen coat, her soaked dress, wrapped her in wool blankets, and set her by the fire. Her teeth were chattering so hard he could hear them across the room. Miguel's wife Elena appeared with a pot of broth. She took one look at the child and crossed herself. "I know this one," Elena whispered. "The Whitmore girl, Grace. Her papa died in the Silver Hill collapse 6 months back." Eli looked up. "She got family. An aunt, Cordelia Shaw." Elena's voice went cold. "Married Grace's uncle before he passed. Now she's got the child and the inheritance both." "Then what's she doing in my front yard at midnight?" Elena didn't answer. Just looked at the child's thin arms, the bruises on her wrists barely visible in the firelight. Eli saw them too. He sat back in his chair and watched the little girl sleep. Her face was pinched even in rest, like she was waiting for something bad to happen. Like she'd learned early that good things didn't last. He knew that face. He'd worn it himself once. The doctor came at first light. Doc Jensen was 63, hands steady as stone eyes that had seen everything the frontier could throw at a man. He examined Grace while Eli stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Pneumonia," Jensen said finally. "Bad but not the worst I've seen. Fever of 102. She'll need rest, warmth, and regular feeding. She'll get it." Jensen packed his bag slowly. "Eli, I have to ask, you know whose child this is?" "Elena told me." "Then you know Cordelia Shaw is going to come looking. That woman's got connections, the mayor, the bank, half the church council." Eli's jaw tightened. "Let her come." Jensen paused at the door. "You've been out here alone 4 years, ever since Hannah passed. Now you're taking in a little girl who belongs to one of the most connected women in the territory." He shook his head. Be careful, Eli. Some fights ain't worth winning. This one is. Jensen left. Eli went back to the chair by Grace's bed and sat down.
Chapter 3.
She woke at noon. Her eyes opened, slow, confused. She looked at the ceiling, the walls, the fire. Then she looked at Eli, and fear flooded her face. Easy. He held up his hands. You're safe. You're in my house. Remember? You came to my gate last night. Grace sat up, blanket clutched to her chest. The blizzard. That's right. I was trying to get somewhere. She pressed her hands to her temples. Can't remember where. Anywhere but home, I reckon. She flinched. Just a small thing, but Eli saw it. You hungry? She nodded. He brought her soup himself. Watched her eat like she'd forgotten what food tasted like. She finished the whole bowl, then looked at him with those two old eyes. Thank you, mister. Eli. Name's Eli McCade. I know who you are. Her voice was quiet. Everyone in town knows. The rich rancher who lives alone. They say you're strange. That what they say? My aunt says you're unnatural. Says a man without a wife or children is either hiding something or broken inside. Eli felt something twist in his chest. Your aunt talks a lot. She talks about everyone. Grace set down her spoon. She'll come for me. When she finds out I'm here, she'll come. Let her. You don't understand. Grace's hands were shaking now. She's not like other ladies. She smiles when she's angry. She whispers when she's about to hurt you, and she never ever forgives. Did she hurt you, Grace? Silence. Those bruises on your wrists. That mark on your shoulder Elena saw when she was changing your clothes. Your aunt do that. Grace's eyes went to the door, to the window, calculating escape routes. I fell, she said. No, you didn't. I fell down the cellar stairs. I'm clumsy. Aunt Cordelia says so all the time. Grace? I fell. Her voice cracked. Please, don't ask me again. Eli sat back. He understood. He'd seen it before in horses that had been beaten too long. They stopped fighting, stopped trusting, started lying to protect themselves because truth had only ever made things worse. All right, he said. You fell. She relaxed just slightly. But you're staying here until you're well. That's not negotiable. When the doctor says you're fit to travel, then we'll talk about what happens next. She'll come before then. I know. She'll bring the sheriff. Probably. She'll tell everyone you took me, that you're the one who's bad. Eli leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Grace. In all your 8 years, has anyone ever fought for you? Anyone at all? She was quiet for a long moment. Papa did. Before he died, he fought for everything. Then you know what it looks like. And you're about to see it again. Cordelia Shaw arrived 3 days later. Eli was in the barn when he heard the wagon. He set down his tools and walked outside, wiping his hands on his pants. The cold had broken, but the sky was gray and the roads were still thick with mud. The wagon was polished. Too polished for the territory. Black horses matched pair. A driver in livery, and in the back, a woman dressed like she was going to a funeral. Cordelia Shaw was beautiful. That was the first thing. Dark hair, pale skin eyes like polished stones. She moved like she owned whatever ground she stood on. Behind her came Sheriff Dalton, red-faced, uncomfortable hand on his gun like he expected trouble. Eli stopped at the porch steps. Didn't move to meet them. Mr. McCade. Cordelia's voice was honeyed, practiced. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Don't recall owning anything of yours, ma'am. My niece, Grace Whitmore. She went missing 3 nights ago. I've been beside myself with worry. Eli looked at her. At the perfect hair, the perfect dress, the complete absence of worry lines on her face. She's here, he said. And she ain't missing. She ran. Cordelia's smile didn't waver. Children are imaginative, Mr. McCade. Grace has had a difficult time since her father's passing. She's prone to flights of fancy, telling stories, running away from perfectly good homes. That what you call it, a perfectly good home. Sheriff Dalton stepped forward. Now, Eli, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Mrs. Shaw has legal guardianship. The child belongs with her family. Family don't leave marks like the ones on that girl. The air went still. Cordelia's smile finally cracked. Just a fraction. I don't know what you're implying, Mr. McCade, but I'll remind you that slander is a serious accusation. Ain't slander if it's true. Sheriff, Cordelia's voice sharpened. I want my niece, now. Dalton shifted his weight. Eli, I don't want trouble. Just bring the girl out, let her go home, and we can all forget this happened. She's sick, pneumonia. Doc Jensen said she needs 2 more weeks of rest minimum. Then I'll hire a nurse. You'll hire someone to watch over a child you beat with a belt buckle. Cordelia's face went white, then red. The transformation was fast, like watching a mask fall away. How dare you? I dare because I've got eyes. Eli stepped forward. I dare because I've seen the marks. I dare because an 8-year-old girl walked 3 miles through a blizzard rather than spend 1 more night in your house. She's a liar, a manipulative, ungrateful little... Careful. Eli's voice dropped. Careful what you say next. Cordelia stopped. She looked at him, really looked, and something in her expression calculated new odds. Sheriff. Her voice was steady again, controlled. I want to file a complaint. This man is holding my ward against her will. I want her removed. Today. Dalton looked between them, sweat on his forehead despite the cold. Eli, I have to follow the law. She's the legal guardian. Then follow the law right. Eli didn't budge. Get a court order. File proper papers. Do it by the book, because if you try to drag that sick child out of my house today, you and I are going to have a problem. Dalton's hand tightened on his gun. Nobody moved. Then Cordelia laughed. High, sharp, wrong. Very well, Mr. McCade. We'll do this your way. I'll have the papers by week's end. A hearing before Judge Hollister by month's end. And when I win, and I will win, I'll make sure everyone in this territory knows what you really are. And what's that? A lonely, broken man who couldn't save his own wife and child trying to steal someone else's. The words hit like a fist. Eli stood there, face carved from stone, watching Cordelia Shaw climb back into her wagon. She arranged her skirts, smoothed her hair, looked at him one last time. February 14th, Mr. McCade. That's when the judge arrives. I'll see you in court. The wagon pulled away. Dalton lingered. Eli. His voice was low. She's got friends in high places. The mayor, the bank. Half the merchants in town owe her money. You warning me? I'm telling you what you're up against. Dalton looked toward the house where a small face was visible in the window. That little girl's been through enough. Don't make promises you can't keep. He mounted his horse and rode after the wagon. Eli stood in the yard until they were out of sight. Then he turned and went inside. Grace was sitting in her bed blanket pulled up to her chin. I heard everything, she said. The window was open. Eli sat down in the chair. Then you know what's coming. She'll win. She always wins. Not this time. You don't know her, Mr. McCade. She got Uncle Robert's money when he died. Got Papa's mine when he died. She gets everything she wants, and anyone who tries to stop her just disappears. Disappears how? Grace's eyes dropped. People stop believing them, stop listening. They lose their jobs, their homes, their friends. She looked up. One man tried to tell the sheriff about her once, about things he'd seen. Week later, he was in jail for stealing. He said he didn't do it, but nobody believed him. Eli leaned forward. Grace, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Not what you think I want to hear. Not what's safe. The truth. She nodded. Do you want to go back to her? The question hung in the air. Grace's hands twisted the blanket. Her breathing quickened, and then so quiet he almost missed it. No. Then you won't. But the law ain't the only thing that matters. Eli stood. There's truth, there's justice, and there's what a man chooses to fight for. He walked to the door. Get some rest. You've got 5 weeks to get strong, and I've got 5 weeks to find a way to keep you. That night, Eli sat at his desk with a lamp burning low. He pulled out a sheet of paper, started making a list. What he needed? A lawyer. Witnesses to the abuse. Evidence of Cordelia's character. Anything that would give a judge reason to take a child from a legal guardian. What he had. A sick child's testimony. Bruises that were already fading. The word of a rancher who hadn't spoken to half the town in 4 years. It wasn't enough. He set down the pen and stared at the wall. Hannah's photograph looked back at him from the mantel. His wife of 12 years, dead in childbirth, the baby with her, gone in the same hour, and he'd been in town buying supplies, arguing about grain prices, wasting time that should have been spent at her side. He'd blamed himself ever since. What would you do? He asked the photograph. How would you save a little girl from a monster when the law's on the monster's side? The photograph didn't answer, but somewhere in the house he heard Grace coughing. A small sound, a human sound, and Eli McCade, who had been dead inside for 4 years, felt something stir. Something that felt a lot like purpose. The next morning, he rode into town. The cold hit him the moment he left the ranch. Sharp, clean, the kind of cold that made you feel alive whether you wanted to or not. The road was mostly clear now, packed snow and mud, and his horse knew the way. The town of Silver Creek sat at the bottom of the valley. Main Street 6 blocks long. General store, bank, church, saloon, hotel. Maybe 500 souls on a good day. Eli hadn't been here in months except for supplies. He'd forgotten how it felt to have people look at him. They were looking now. Mrs. Patterson stopped sweeping her porch, turned to whisper to her neighbor. 2 men outside the saloon went quiet as he passed. Word traveled fast in a small town. And Cordelia had been busy. He hitched his horse outside the law office, small building wedged between the bank and the general store. The sign said, Benjamin Cole, Attorney at Law. Inside it smelled of paper and tobacco. A young man sat behind a desk, writing in a ledger. He looked up when Eli entered. Mr. McCade, I've been expecting you. Word travels. It does. Cole set down his pen. Cordelia Shaw was here yesterday. Filed a formal complaint. Custody hearing scheduled for February 14th before Judge Hollister. I need a lawyer. You need a miracle. Cole leaned back. I'll be honest with you, Mr. McCade. I'm young. I've been practicing 2 years. Cordelia Shaw could afford someone from Helena, but she came to me first. Made me an offer. What kind of offer? The kind that ends my career if I refuse and makes it if I accept. Cole stood. She wanted me to represent her. Guarantee a win. When I said I couldn't guarantee anything, she implied there were other ways to influence a verdict. And you said no. I said I'd think about it. Then I stayed up all night thinking. Cole walked to the window. My father was a lawyer too. Died when I was 15. Fever. But before he went, he told me something I've never forgotten. He turned to face Eli. He said, bend the law isn't just words on paper, it's a promise that even the powerless can find justice. The day you break that promise is the day you stop being a lawyer and start being a thief. Eli waited. I'm your lawyer, Mr. McCade, if you'll have me. What about Cordelia? She can find someone else. And she will. Someone expensive, experienced, and completely without conscience. Cole's jaw tightened. But she won't find someone who knows this town like I do, who knows the people, who knows where the bodies are buried. There are bodies. Figure of speech, mostly. Cole pulled out a chair. Sit down. We've got a lot to discuss, and not much time. Good. They talked for 2 hours. Cole took notes, drew diagrams, asked questions Eli didn't know the answers to. The problem, Cole said finally, is proof. You've got a child's testimony, but children can be coached. You've got bruises, but bruises fade. You've got instinct, but instinct doesn't hold up in court. So what do we need? Witnesses. Someone who saw the abuse. Someone who can testify that Cordelia is unfit. The whole town's afraid of her. Not the whole town. Cole leaned forward. There's a woman, Josephine Rainwater, half Salish, half white, runs a healing practice out by the reservation. She's treated children from the Shaw household before. Why would she help? Because she's got nothing to lose. The town already treats her like an outsider. And because... Cole hesitated. Because she lost a child of her own, years ago. She knows what it's like when the law fails. Eli stood. Where do I find her? East Road past the Miller farm. Small cabin with a blue door. But Eli... Cole caught his arm. Be careful. Josephine's testimony could help us, but it could also hurt. Some folks in this town won't listen to a word she says just because of who she is. Then we find people who will. We've got 5 weeks. Then we better start now. Yet, the ride to Josephine's took an hour. Her cabin was exactly where Cole said it would be. Small, neat, a blue door that stood out against the brown and white landscape. Smoke curled from the chimney. Eli dismounted, tied his horse, and knocked. The woman who answered was maybe 45. Dark hair streaked with gray. Eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him. Mr. McCade, she said, I wondered when you'd come. You know who I am. Everyone knows. The rancher who found a frozen child. The rancher who's about to fight Cordelia Shaw. She stepped aside. Come in, I'll make tea. Inside the cabin smelled of herbs and wood smoke. Dried plants hung from the ceiling. Jars lined the shelves. A fire crackled in the hearth. Josephine set a kettle on the stove. You want to know if I'll testify. Will you? That depends. She turned to face him. I've treated 3 children from that household in the past 2 years. Burns, bruises, a broken wrist that was explained as a fall. I reported it to the sheriff. Nothing happened. I'm not the sheriff. No. You're a rich white man who's never had to fight for anything in his life. Her voice was sharp. Why should I trust you? Eli was quiet for a moment. 4 years ago, he said finally, my wife died giving birth to our first child. The baby died too. I was in town when it happened, arguing about grain prices. I was 10 miles away when they needed me, and by the time I got home they were gone. Josephine's expression didn't change. I've spent 4 years blaming myself, hiding from the world, telling myself I couldn't save them, so why try to save anyone? He looked at her. 3 nights ago, a little girl collapsed at my gate. She asked me for 1 night of shelter, and I realized something. What? I couldn't save my wife. I couldn't save my child. But maybe I can save her. The kettle whistled. Josephine poured the tea, handed him a cup, sat down across from him. I'll testify, she said. But you need to understand something, Mr. McCade. Cordelia Shaw isn't just cruel. She's clever. She's been doing this for years, and she's never been caught. If you go after her, she'll come after you. Everything you've done, everything you've hidden, she'll find it and use it. I don't have anything to hide. Josephine looked at him, long, steady. Everyone has something to hide, she said. The question is whether you're willing to let it come out. Eli rode home as the sun set. The sky was orange and gold, fading to purple at the edges. The cold was coming back, creeping in with the darkness. He thought about what Josephine had said. Everyone has something to hide. She was right. He had something. Something he'd never told anyone. Not Elena, not Miguel, Not even Hannah before she died. Something about the night she went into labor. The night he should have been there and wasn't. The truth was, he hadn't been arguing about grain prices. He'd been at the doctor's office. Getting a diagnosis he'd been too afraid to share. The doctor had told him that day that Hannah's pregnancy was dangerous, that she might not survive the birth, that they should consider alternatives. Eli had planned to tell her that night, to discuss options, to make decisions together. But he'd been too late. She'd gone into labor early. The baby came too fast. And by the time he got home, there were no more decisions to make. He'd carried that guilt for 4 years. The guilt of knowing and not acting. The guilt of having information that might have saved her and keeping it to himself for one day too long. If Cordelia found out if she could prove he'd known the risks, and said nothing, she could paint him as negligent, reckless, unfit to care for a child. She wouldn't be entirely wrong. Eli rode through the gate, his mind churning. The house was lit. Warm light in the windows, smoke from the chimney. Grace was waiting on the porch wrapped in a blanket. She shouldn't have been out of bed, but she was there anyway, watching for him. "You came back," she said. "Told you I would." People say that a lot. They don't always mean it. He dismounted, walked up the steps, and sat down beside her on the porch bench. The cold bit through his coat, but he didn't move. "Grace, I'm going to ask you to do something hard." "What?" "Trust me, for 5 weeks. Even when it looks like we're losing. Even when Cordelia comes at us with everything she's got. Even when the whole town turns against us." He looked at her. "Can you do that?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay. Okay. I trusted Papa. He's gone now, but he always said the best thing about trust is it doesn't cost nothing to give." She pulled the blanket tighter. "So I'll give it to you, Mr. McCade, and you can prove me right or wrong." Eli felt something crack open in his chest. "Eli," he said. "What?" "You can call me Eli." She smiled. Small, fragile, real. "Okay, Eli." The stars were coming out one by one. The cold was deepening. Somewhere in town, Cordelia Shaw was planning her next move. But right now on this porch, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was a little girl who'd chosen to trust, and a broken man who'd chosen to fight. 5 weeks. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start. The first week passed like water through a sieve. Eli spent his days riding between the ranch and town, building something he'd never built before. Alliances, connections, the kind of web that catches when things fall apart. Grace grew stronger. The fever broke on the 4th day, and by the 7th, she was out of bed following Elena around the kitchen, asking questions about everything. "Why do you put salt in the bread?" "Because it tastes better." "Why does it taste better?" "Because God made it that way." "Did God make everything taste better with salt?" Elena laughed. It was the first time Eli had heard that sound in his house in years. He was at the barn door watching when Miguel came up beside him. "She's changing things, boss." "I know." Elena hasn't laughed like that since our Maria got married and moved to Helena. Miguel leaned against the doorframe. "The house feels different. Alive." "It won't last if we lose the hearing." "Then we don't lose." Eli looked at his foreman. 15 years they'd worked together, through droughts and floods and the winter of '83 that killed half the herd. Miguel had never once complained. "I need you to do something," Eli said. "Name it." "Ask around. Quietly. Anyone who's had dealings with Cordelia Shaw. Anyone who might have seen something, heard something. I need witnesses." Miguel nodded slowly. "That's dangerous work. She's got eyes everywhere." "I know. People are scared of her. I know that too." Miguel was quiet for a moment. Then he straightened up, set his hat firmly on his head. "I'll start tonight. Got a cousin who works at the hotel. She sees everyone who comes and goes. Hears things. Be careful. Always am boss." He walked off toward the bunkhouse. Eli watched him go, then turned back to the kitchen window. Grace was helping Elena roll out dough, now flour on her nose, concentration on her face. She looked up, saw him watching, smiled. Something in Eli's chest ached. He turned away before she could see his face. The second week brought trouble. Eli rode into town on Monday for supplies. The general store was quiet when he entered. Too quiet. Henderson was behind the counter, but he wouldn't meet Eli's eyes. Need flour, salt, coffee. Henderson moved slowly, gathered the items, set them on the counter. That'll be $4. Eli counted out the coins. Something wrong. Henderson glanced at the window, at the street outside. Mrs. Shaw came by yesterday, asked about my account, reminded me I've got a note due at the bank next month. And she mentioned you, said folks who do business with you might find their credit harder to come by. Eli's jaw tightened. What'd you say? I said I'd think about it. Henderson finally looked at him. I've known you 15 years, Eli. You're a good man. But I've got a family, a business. If she calls that note early, I lose everything. I understand. Do you? Henderson's voice dropped. She's not just threatening me. She's been to the blacksmith, the feed store, the hotel. Anyone you might need, she's gotten to first. Who's still standing? Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Father Ashford hasn't taken a side yet, and there's old Doc Jensen. He's too stubborn to scare and too old to care. He paused. That's about it. Eli gathered his supplies. Thanks for telling me. Eli. Henderson caught his arm. That little girl, is she worth all this? Eli thought about Grace, about the flour on her nose, about the way she'd smiled at him through the window. Yeah, he said. She is. He walked out into the cold. Cordelia was waiting. She stood on the boardwalk across the street, wrapped in fur, beautiful and deadly as a winter storm. Two men flanked her, big, hard-faced, the kind of men who solved problems with their fists. Mr. McCade. Her voice carried clear across the mud. I was hoping we'd run into each other. Eli loaded his supplies onto his horse. Didn't respond. I've been thinking about our situation. She crossed the street, her boots somehow staying clean despite the mud. There might be a way to resolve this without the unpleasantness of a trial. I'm listening. Give her back, today. I'll drop the charges. We'll forget this ever happened. She smiled. You can go back to your ranch, your horses, your quiet little life. No one has to get hurt. And Grace? Grace will be fine. Children are resilient. She'll forget this little adventure soon enough. Eli turned to face her. Let me ask you something, Mrs. Shaw. That night, the blizzard. Why was an 8-year-old girl walking alone in a storm that killed 2 grown men? Cordelia's smile flickered. She ran away. Children do that sometimes. Why? Because she's troubled, disturbed. The loss of her father affected her deeply. Or because she was running from something. Someone. Eli stepped closer. I've seen the marks, Mrs. Shaw. Belt buckle shapes, cigar burns. The kind of marks that don't come from falling downstairs. Lies. That child lies constantly. Does she? Or does she tell the truth to anyone who'll listen, and you just make sure no one listens? Cordelia's face went hard. The mask dropped just for a second, and Eli saw what was underneath. Cold. Empty. The face of someone who'd learned long ago that other people were just obstacles or tools. You're making a mistake, Mr. McCade. A very expensive mistake. Maybe. I will destroy you. Everything you have. Everything you've built. By the time I'm done, you won't be able to show your face in this territory. Maybe, Eli said again. But here's the thing about destruction, Mrs. Shaw. It works both ways. He mounted his horse, looked down at her from the saddle. February 14th. I'll see you in court. He rode away without looking back. That night, Grace had a nightmare. Eli heard her screaming from his bedroom. He was down the hall before he was fully awake, bursting through her door to find her tangled in blankets fighting shadows that weren't there. "No! Please, I won't tell. I won't tell anyone." "Grace." He caught her hands. "Grace, wake up. You're safe." Her eyes flew open, wild, terrified. For a moment she didn't recognize him. Then she did. She threw herself against his chest and sobbed. Eli held her, didn't speak, just let her cry until the shaking stopped and her breathing slowed. "Sorry," she whispered finally. "Sorry, I'm sorry." "Nothing to be sorry for. I woke you up. Wasn't sleeping anyway." She pulled back, looked at him with those two old eyes. "I dream about the cellar, about being locked in, about the dark." Her voice was flat, distant. "She'd put me there when I was bad, sometimes for a whole day. No food, no water, just dark and cold and waiting." Eli's hands curled into fists. "Once there was a rat. I could hear it in the corner, scratching, coming closer." She shuddered. "I screamed until my throat bled, but no one came." She said screaming was just noise and noise didn't change anything. "Grace, I learned not to scream, learned to be quiet, learned to be small and invisible, and never ever make her angry." She looked at him. "But I got angry anyway, inside where she couldn't see, and when the blizzard came I thought maybe if I ran far enough, if I got lost enough, I'd find somewhere she couldn't reach." "You did." "Did I?" Her voice cracked. "She's still out there, still coming. And when she gets me back, she's not getting you back. You can't promise that." "I can." Eli took her hands. "I can promise to fight, to do everything in my power, to stand between you and her, until I can't stand anymore." "Why?" The question hung in the air. "Why do you care I'm nobody? Just an orphan, just a burden. Uncle Robert used to say I cost more than I was worth. Aunt Cordelia says I'm only good for what I'll inherit. She said that. She says it all the time, that Papa left me the mine, that it should have gone to her, that I'm just—" Grace's voice broke. "Just in the way." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "When I was a boy," he said finally, "my father used to tell me that a man's worth isn't measured by what he owns. It's measured by what he protects, by who he stands for when standing is hard." "What does that mean?" "It means you're not in the way, Grace. You're not a burden. You're a child who deserves to be safe, who deserves to be loved, and anyone who tells you different is a liar." She stared at him. "Do you mean that?" "Every word." Something shifted in her face. The wall she'd built the careful distance cracked just a little. "Papa used to say things like that," she whispered, "before he died. He sounds like a good man. He was the best." Her eyes filled. "I miss him so much." Eli pulled her close again, let her cry into his shirt, felt her small body shake with grief she'd been carrying alone for 6 months. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you." The third week brought an unexpected ally. Eli was in the barn when the rider came, a woman dressed plainly riding a horse that had seen better days. She dismounted at the fence and walked toward him with the kind of purpose that meant business. "Mr. McCade, my name is Martha Sullivan. I was Robert Whitmore's housekeeper before he died." Eli set down his tools. "I'm listening." "I left Mrs. Shaw's employ 2 months ago. Couldn't stomach it anymore." Martha's face was lined weathered, the face of a woman who'd worked hard her whole life. "I saw things in that house. Things I should have spoken about sooner." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was scared. Because she threatened to have me arrested for theft if I talked. Because I'm 63 years old with no family and no savings, and I didn't know where else to go." "What changed?" Martha looked toward the house, toward the window where Grace was visible, helping Elena with something. I heard what you're doing. Standing up for that child when no one else will. She turned back to him. I was a coward, Mr. McCade. I watched Cordelia hurt that little girl and did nothing. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself someone else would help. Her voice cracked. No one did. And now I can't sleep, can't eat, can't live with myself knowing I had a chance to stop it and didn't take it. Eli studied her face, saw the guilt there raw and real. What can you tell me? Everything. The beatings, the cellar, the times she'd lock Grace outside in the cold as punishment, the way she'd smile afterward like nothing happened. Martha's hands were shaking. I can tell you about the money, too. The way she's been draining Grace's inheritance, forging signatures, moving funds. You have proof. I have letters, documents I took when I left. Insurance, I thought, in case she came after me. Martha reached into her coat, pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. It's not much, but it's something. Eli took the bundle, felt its weight. Mrs. Sullivan, you know what this means. Testifying against her, coming forward. I know. She'll come after you, try to discredit you, make your life hell. My life's already hell. Martha straightened up. At least this way I might sleep again. Eli looked at her for a long moment. You're a brave woman. No. I'm a coward trying to make amends. She glanced at the house again. That little girl deserves better than what I gave her. Better than what this town gave her. Someone's got to stand up. Might as well be me. That night, Eli spread Martha's documents on his desk. Bank statements, transfer records, letters in Cordelia's handwriting. A trail of theft that went back months, maybe years. Benjamin Cole came to the ranch the next morning to review them. This is good, Cole said, turning pages. Better than good. This is proof of financial misconduct. Breach of fiduciary duty. Is it enough? By itself, maybe not. But combined with the abuse testimony, with Josephine's medical records, with Martha's eyewitness account. Cole looked up. We're building a case, Eli. A real case. Cordelia's not going to sit still. She knows we're gathering evidence. She's already moving. I heard she hired a lawyer from Helena, Augustus Crane. Expensive, ruthless, known for winning cases no one should win. However he has to. Cole's jaw tightened. He's going to attack every witness, find dirt on everyone, turn the trial into a circus. Then we need to be ready. We need more than ready. We need something he can't twist, something undeniable. Eli thought about that. Grace, he said slowly. Grace knows things she hasn't told anyone. She's 8 years old, a child's testimony. She mentioned something the first night, something about her father's papers, documents he hid before he died. She said he knew something was wrong. Knew Cordelia was dangerous. Cole leaned forward. Where are these papers? She doesn't remember. The fever, the trauma, it's all jumbled together. But she keeps having dreams about a hiding place. Somewhere her father showed her. Can you ask her? I've tried. Gently. She shuts down every time. Eli rubbed his face. She's terrified, Ben. Of remembering. Of what it means. We need those papers. I know. The hearing's in 2 weeks. I know that too. Cole gathered the documents. I'll start building the case with what we have. You work on Grace, earn her trust, help her remember. He paused at the door. Eli, I have to be honest with you. Even with everything we have, it might not be enough. Judge Hollister is fair, but he's also traditional. A wealthy woman established in the community versus a single rancher, the odds aren't in our favor. Then we change the odds. How? Eli looked out the window. Grace was in the yard, brushing one of the gentler horses. Her movements were careful, patient. The horse stood calm under her touch. I don't know yet, he admitted. but I'll figure it out. The fourth week brought the counterattack. Eli was in town meeting with Cole when the first blow landed. A notice in the newspaper. Front page. Concerns raised about child's welfare. Local ranchers' fitness questioned. The article was careful, just careful enough to avoid libel. But the insinuation was clear. Anonymous sources expressing worry. Questions about why a bachelor would take in an orphaned girl. References to Eli's isolated lifestyle and unusual reclusiveness. Cordelia, Cole said, throwing the paper down. She's poisoning the well before the trial even starts. What can we do? Not much. The accusations are vague enough that we can't sue. But everyone in town will read this. Everyone will wonder. Eli thought about Henderson at the general store, about the whispers that already followed him. Then we give them something else to wonder about. What do you mean? She's playing dirty. Fine. Let's show people the truth about her, the real truth. Cole shook his head. Publishing accusations before the trial could backfire, make us look desperate. Not publishing, talking, person to person. The people who matter, the ones who'll be on the jury, the ones who know both of us, they need to hear the other side. That's a lot of conversations. Then I better get started. Eli spent the next week doing something he'd avoided for 4 years, talking to people, visiting neighbors, showing up at the feed store, the blacksmith, the church, not asking for anything, just being present, letting people see him. Grace came with him sometimes. People noticed. The way she stayed close to him. The way she'd smile when he put his hand on her shoulder. The way she looked healthier, happier, more alive than anyone had seen her in months. Father Ashford stopped him after Sunday service. That child's different than she was. Better food, better sleep. More than that. The priest studied Eli's face. She trusts you. After everything she's been through, she trusts you. She's learning to. That's not nothing, Mr. McCade. Children who've been hurt like she has, they don't give trust easily. It has to be earned. I'm trying. I can see that. Ashford was quiet for a moment. I've been watching Cordelia Shaw for years. Something's wrong there. Something beneath the surface. I couldn't prove it, couldn't say exactly what, but... He shook his head. When the hearing comes, I'll be there, and I'll tell the truth about what I've seen. Thank you, Father. Don't thank me yet. The truth doesn't always win. But it's still the truth. Yes. Ashford's eyes were sad, for what that's worth. The night before the hearing, Eli sat on the porch with Grace. The sky was clear, stars thick as scattered flour across the darkness. The cold had softened over the past week winter, loosening its grip just enough to make breathing easier. Grace was bundled in a blanket, leaning against his shoulder. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow. Are you scared? Eli considered the question. A little. Papa said being scared wasn't bad. Being scared meant something mattered. Your papa was wise. He was. She was quiet for a moment. I remembered something. Today, when I was brushing Maple, I remembered. Eli went still. Papa took me to the mine once, before he died. There's a place inside a small room with a metal door. He showed me where he kept his important papers. Said if anything happened to him, I should tell someone I trusted. Do you trust me? She looked up at him. Her eyes were clear, steady. Yes. Then we'll go to the mine, after the hearing. Whatever happens, we'll find those papers. And if we lose, Eli pulled her closer. Then we find another way, and another, and another, until we don't have to find ways anymore. Promise? Promise. She was quiet for a long time after that. Then so soft he almost missed it. Papa would have liked you. Eli's throat tightened. I wish I could have known him. Me too. Grace yawned, exhaustion finally winning. But maybe he sent me to you. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe people who love us find ways to help even when they're gone. She fell asleep against his shoulder. Eli sat there holding her, watching the stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow they'd stand in a courtroom and fight for the right to be a family. He didn't know if they'd win, but he knew with a certainty that went deeper than bone that he would never stop fighting. Never stop trying. Never stop standing between this child and anyone who would hurt her. That was enough. For now, that was enough. February 14th came cold and bright. Eli dressed in his best suit, the one he'd worn to Hannah's funeral 4 years ago. It still fit, though the fabric felt foreign against his skin. He'd spent too long in work clothes hiding from the world. No more hiding now. Grace was waiting in the kitchen when he came downstairs. Elena had done her hair in braids tied with blue ribbons. Her dress was new, bought special for today. She looked small, young, terrified. "You ready?" Eli asked. "No." "Me neither." She almost smiled at that. They rode into town together, Miguel driving the wagon. Elena sat in the back with Grace holding her hand. The roads were clear, the mud frozen solid overnight, and the wheels rattled against the hard ground. The courthouse stood at the end of Main Street. 2 stories, brick and white columns. The American flag hung limp in the still air. Already people were gathering on the steps, watching, waiting. Eli helped Grace down from the wagon. Her hand was cold in his. "Whatever happens in there," he said quietly, "you tell the truth. That's all you have to do." "What if the truth isn't enough?" "Then we find more truth. But we start with what we have." They walked up the steps together. Inside the courtroom smelled of wood polish and tobacco. Benches lined both sides, already filling with spectators. Henderson from the general store, the Miller family from the neighboring farm, Father Ashford in his collar sitting near the back, and there at the front, Cordelia Shaw. She wore black. Mourning clothes, though she was mourning nothing. Her lawyer sat beside her, a thin man with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. Augustus Crane, the man Cole had warned about. Eli led Grace to the front bench on their side. Benjamin Cole was already there, papers spread before him, face tight with concentration. "How are we looking?" Eli asked. "As good as we can. Witnesses are ready. Documents are in order." Cole glanced at Grace. "How is she?" "Scared, strong, both." "She'll need to be." The bailiff called the room to order. Everyone rose as Judge Hollister entered. 70 years old, white-beard eyes that had seen everything Montana could throw at a man. He settled into his chair and surveyed the courtroom. "We're here on the matter of guardianship for Grace Elizabeth Whitmore, minor child." His voice was deep measured. "Mrs. Cordelia Shaw, current guardian, has filed a complaint against Mr. Elijah McCade for unlawful retention of a ward. Mr. McCade has counterfiled for custody transfer based on allegations of abuse and financial misconduct." He looked at both tables. "This is a guardianship hearing, not a criminal trial. My job is to determine what's best for the child. I'll hear from both sides, review the evidence, and make a decision." He nodded to Crane. "Mr. Crane, you may begin." Augustus Crane rose like smoke from a fire, smooth, unhurried. "Your Honor, the facts of this case are simple. Mrs. Shaw is Grace Whitmore's legal guardian appointed after the tragic death of the child's father. She is a woman of standing in this community, a woman of means, a woman who has provided for this child's every need." He paced slowly, his voice filling the room. "Mr. McCade, by contrast, is a recluse, a man who has hidden from society for 4 years. A man with no wife, no children, no experience raising a young girl. He took this child into his home without permission, without authority, and has refused to return her despite repeated legal requests." He turned to face the courtroom. "The question before this court is not whether Mr. McCade has good intentions. The question is whether a court of law should strip legal guardianship from a respectable woman and hand a child to a stranger based on nothing more than the stranger's feelings." He sat down. Cordelia smiled. Cole rose. "Your Honor, Mr. Crane speaks of facts. Let me give you some facts he neglected to mention. He walked to the center of the room. Fact. On the night of January 15th, Grace Whitmore walked 3 miles through a blizzard that killed 2 grown men. She nearly died of exposure and pneumonia. Why would an 8-year-old child risk death to escape a home where she was, as Mr. Crane puts it, provided for? He let the question hang. Fact, multiple witnesses will testify to physical abuse, belt marks, cigar burns, a pattern of cruelty that has been hidden behind closed doors for months. Fact, financial records show a systematic draining of Grace's inheritance. Thousands of dollars moved, transferred, hidden. Money that belonged to a child taken by the woman sworn to protect her. Cole turned to face Cordelia. Mrs. Shaw speaks of standing, of respectability, but respectability is a mask, Your Honor, and today we're going to show you what's underneath. The first witness was Doc Jensen. He walked to the stand slowly, his age showing in every step, but his voice was steady when he spoke. I examined Grace Whitmore twice. Once on January 16th, when Mr. McCade brought her to me after the blizzard, and again last week, at the request of Mr. Cole. Can you describe her condition on January 16th? Pneumonia, fever of 102, malnourished, underweight by at least 10 pounds for a child her age. Jensen paused. And bruising. Old bruises mostly faded, but the patterns were distinctive. What kind of patterns? Belt buckle shapes on her back, circular marks on her arms consistent with cigar burns, a healed fracture in her left wrist that was never properly set. A murmur ran through the courtroom. In your medical opinion, Dr. Jensen, what caused these injuries? Repeated physical abuse, over a period of months, possibly years. Crane rose for cross-examination. Dr. Jensen, you're how old? 63. And your eyesight, your memory, these are still reliable. Reliable enough to know abuse when I see it. But you can't say definitively who caused these injuries, can you? Children fall. They play roughly. They get hurt in all sorts of ways. Children don't fall onto cigar tips, Mr. Crane. That's speculation, doctor, not fact. It's 40 years of medical experience. Make of it what you will. Crane sat down clearly unsatisfied. Next came Josephine Rainwater. She walked to the stand with quiet dignity, ignoring the whispers that followed her. Half the courtroom had never seen a woman like her in a place like this. State your name and occupation. Josephine Rainwater. I'm a healer. I treat people who can't afford doctors or don't trust them. Have you treated Grace Whitmore? 3 times over the past 2 years. Burns once, bruises twice. Each time Mrs. Shaw brought her to me instead of Doc Jensen. Josephine's eyes found Cordelia. She said she didn't want to trouble the doctor with small things, but the things I saw weren't small. Can you describe them? The first time Grace had burns on her hands. Mrs. Shaw said she'd touched a hot stove, but the burns were on the backs of her hands, not the palms. That doesn't happen from touching. That happens from being pressed against something. The courtroom went quiet. The second time, bruises on her ribs. The third time, a gash on her forehead that needed stitches. Each time, Mrs. Shaw paid cash. No records, no questions. Crane stood. Miss Rainwater, you're not a licensed physician, are you? No. In fact, you practice medicine illegally. I help people who have no one else. But you have no formal training, no credentials, no standing in the medical community. I have eyes, Mr. Crane, and a conscience. Sometimes that's enough. I think the court can judge what's enough. Crane smiled thinly. No further questions. Martha Sullivan took the stand next. She looked older than she had at the ranch, tired, but her voice was clear. I worked as Mrs. Shaw's housekeeper for 8 months. I saw things no one should see. What kind of things? Grace locked in the cellar for hours, sometimes overnight. No food, no water, no light. I could hear her crying through the floor. Martha's voice shook. I heard Mrs. Shaw tell her once that crying was weakness, that her father would be ashamed of her, that she should have died in that mine instead of him. A gasp from the benches. Why didn't you report this? Because I was afraid. Mrs. Shaw threatened me, said she'd have me arrested for theft if I talked, said no one would believe a servant over a lady of standing. Martha looked at the judge. She was right. No one did believe me. Until Mr. McCade. Crane rose. His face was harder now. Mrs. Sullivan, you were dismissed from Mrs. Shaw's employ, weren't you? I quit. After being accused of stealing silverware. That accusation was a lie. Was it, or are you here today seeking revenge against an employer who caught you with your hand in the till? I never stole anything. But you can't prove that, can you? Just like you can't prove any of these allegations. It's your word against Mrs. Shaw's. Crane leaned closer. And why should anyone believe the word of a thief? I'm not a... No further questions. Martha left the stand with tears on her face. Then it was Grace's turn. She walked forward slowly, her small body rigid with fear. The witness chair seemed too big for her. She looked out at the courtroom at all the faces watching, and her hands twisted together in her lap. Grace? Cole's voice was gentle. I'm going to ask you some questions. Just tell the truth. Okay. Okay. Can you tell us about living with your aunt? Grace was silent for a long moment. She doesn't like me, she said finally. She never wanted me. She wanted Papa's mine. I heard her say so once to a man who came to the house. She said I was just in the way. Did your aunt ever hurt you? Grace's eyes went to Cordelia. The woman stared back, her face carefully blank. But something in her eyes was a warning, a threat. Grace looked down at her hands. She hit me sometimes. When I was bad. When I spilled things or made noise or asked too many questions. She said children should be seen and not heard. But I wasn't supposed to be seen either. Did she do anything else? She locked me in the cellar. When I cried about Papa. She said crying was for babies, and I needed to grow up. Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. It was dark in there. And cold. And I could hear things moving. Rats, I think. I tried to be quiet, but I was so scared. The courtroom was utterly silent. Grace, why did you run away that night? The night of the blizzard. For the first time, Grace looked at Eli. Her eyes found his across the room, and something in them steadied. Because she told me she was going to send me away. To a place for difficult children. She said I'd never come back. That nobody would miss me. That I was just a burden everyone would be glad to be rid of. Tears were running down her face now, but she didn't stop. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to disappear, so I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. And then, she looked at Eli again. Then I found his gate, and I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would help me. Cole let the silence stretch. One more question, Grace. In the weeks you've been with Mr. McCade, has he ever hurt you? Ever frightened you? Ever made you feel unsafe? No. Her voice was clear now, strong. He's been kind. He teaches me things. He listens when I talk. He makes me feel like I matter. She wiped her eyes. He makes me feel like I have a family again. Crane rose for cross-examination. The room tensed. Grace, you said your aunt hit you, but you also said you were bad sometimes, didn't you? Spilling things, making noise. I didn't mean to, but you did those things. And when children misbehave, sometimes they need discipline. That's not abuse, that's parenting. She burned me with a cigar. Crane paused, just barely. Did you see her do it? I felt it. But did you see her? Or could it have been an accident? Could you have brushed against something hot? I didn't. The cellar. You said she locked you in, but maybe she was trying to teach you a lesson. Maybe she was doing what she thought was best. Parents don't always explain their reasons to children. She's not my parent. No, but she's your guardian, appointed by law, entrusted with your care. Crane leaned closer. And Mr. McCade. This man you've known for only 6 weeks, you'd rather go with him. A stranger. A man who lives alone, who hides from the world, who has no family of his own. Grace looked at Crane, then at Cordelia, then at Eli. Yes, she said quietly. Because he chose me. She never did. The courtroom stirred. Crane sat down. Finally, it was Eli's turn. He walked to the stand with his heart pounding. The whole room was watching, judging. He could feel Cordelia's eyes on him like a cold hand on his spine. Mr. McCade, Cole began, why did you take Grace in that night? Because she was dying. Because she asked for help. Because... He stopped. Because I couldn't walk away. Some would say you should have contacted the authorities, returned her to her legal guardian. Some would be wrong. Why? Eli looked at Grace, at her small face, at the hope in her eyes that she was trying so hard to hide. Because I know what it looks like when someone's given up on living, when they've been hurt so bad they'd rather die than go back. I saw that look on her face the night I found her, and I couldn't... His voice broke. I couldn't let that be the end of her story. You've been alone for 4 years, Mr. McCade, since your wife passed. Why open your home now? Why take this risk? Eli was quiet for a long moment. When Hannah died, I thought I died too. I shut everyone out, built walls so high nobody could reach me. I told myself I was protecting myself, but really, I was just hiding, just existing, not living. He looked at the courtroom, at all the faces that had judged him for years. Then a little girl collapsed at my gate and asked for one night, and suddenly all those walls didn't matter. All that hiding didn't matter, because there was someone who needed help, and I could either give it or walk away. And you chose to help. I chose to live again. Eli's eyes found Grace. She saved me as much as I saved her, maybe more. Crane stood. Mr. McCade, let's talk about your wife. She died in childbirth, correct? Eli's stomach clenched. Yes. And you weren't there when it happened? No. You were in town, while your wife died at home, alone. She wasn't alone. She had hired help, not you, her husband, the man who should have been there. Crane's voice sharpened. And now you want us to believe you're capable of caring for a child, when you couldn't even be there for your own wife. The words hit like blows. That's different. Is it a pattern of absence, a pattern of failure? First your wife, now this child you barely know. Crane turned to the judge. Your Honor, Mr. McCade may have good intentions, but intentions don't raise children. Experience does, stability does, family does. This man has none of those things. Eli sat frozen. The guilt he'd carried for 4 years was rising up, choking him. Then from the back of the courtroom, a voice. That's not true. Everyone turned. Father Ashford was standing. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded. Ashford walked forward, his collar bright against his black shirt. I've known Eli McCade for 15 years. I performed his wedding. I buried his wife and child. I watched him grieve in ways that would break most men. He stopped in front of the bench. Mr. Crane speaks of failure, of absence. But I've also watched Eli McCade give more to this community than he's ever taken. Feed families during the drought of '84. Donate lumber for the church roof. Pay medical bills for workers who couldn't afford them, quietly, without asking for recognition. Ashford's voice rang through the room. A man isn't defined by his worst moment. He's defined by what he does after. And Eli McCade has spent 4 years proving that he's more than his grief, more than his guilt, more than the tragedy that almost destroyed him. He turned to look at Grace. That little girl chose him, After everything she's been through, after every adult who's failed her, she chose to trust him. And in my experience, children know things that adults have forgotten. They know who's safe, who's real, who will fight for them. Ashford faced the judge. I don't know what the law says about custody and guardianship and legal standing, but I know what my faith says. It says we're judged by how we treat the least among us, the orphans, the widows, the lost. He pointed at Cordelia. That woman has treated a child like property, like an obstacle, like something to be used and discarded. He pointed at Eli. That man has treated her like a human being, like she matters, like she deserves to be loved. The courtroom was silent. I know which one I'd trust with a child's life. Ashford walked back to his seat. Judge Hollister looked at the room, at the witnesses, at the evidence spread before him, at Grace sitting small and straight watching with eyes that had seen too much. I've heard enough, he said finally. We'll take a recess, 1 hour. When we return, I'll give my ruling. He stood. The courtroom exploded into noise. Eli found Grace in the hallway. She was standing by the window looking out at nothing. Hey! She turned. Her face was pale. What happens now? We wait. What if he says no? Eli knelt down so he could look her in the eyes. Then we appeal. We fight. We find another way. What if there isn't another way? He took her hands. Grace, listen to me. Whatever that judge says in there, it doesn't change what's true. You matter. You're worth fighting for. And I'm not giving up. Not today. Not ever. She looked at him for a long moment. Papa used to say that he'd never give up on me. He didn't. He loved you till the end, and whatever happens now, that love is still with you, still protecting you. Her eyes filled. I want to stay with you. I know. I want to go home. Eli pulled her close. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The hour passed like years. When they filed back into the courtroom, the tension was thick enough to touch. Everyone took their seats. The judge entered. The room stood, sat. Judge Hollister looked at the papers before him, then at Cordelia, then at Eli, then at Grace. This case, he said slowly, is not simple. Eli's heart sank. The law is clear on guardianship. Mrs. Shaw was legally appointed. Mr. McCade has no blood relation to the child. On paper, the answer is obvious. Cordelia smiled. But the law exists to serve justice, not the other way around. The smile faded. I've heard testimony today that troubles me deeply. Medical evidence of abuse, eyewitness accounts of cruelty, financial records suggesting embezzlement, and a child. His voice softened. A child who would rather die in a blizzard than return to the woman who was supposed to protect her. He looked at Cordelia. Mrs. Shaw, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into the financial management of Grace Whitmore's estate. If the allegations of embezzlement are proven, you will face criminal charges. Cordelia's face went white. As for guardianship, the judge paused. I'm granting temporary custody to Mr. Elijah McCade, pending a full investigation and final hearing in 60 days. The courtroom erupted. Eli couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Grace was gripping his hand so tight it hurt. This is outrageous. Crane was on his feet. Your Honor, this sets a dangerous precedent. Mr. Crane, my decision is made. The child remains with Mr. McCade until further notice. Mrs. Shaw is ordered to have no contact with the minor. The judge's gavel came down. Court is adjourned. Grace threw her arms around Eli's neck. We won, she whispered. Not yet. He held her tight. But we're closer. Across the room, Cordelia Shaw stood frozen. Her face was a mask of fury barely contained. She looked at Eli, and what he saw in her eyes made his blood run cold. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The ride home should have felt like victory. It didn't. Eli kept looking over his shoulder the whole way, kept waiting for something to go wrong. Cordelia's face in that courtroom haunted him. The cold fury. The promise of revenge. Grace sat beside him in the wagon, quiet but lighter somehow. Like a weight had been lifted that she'd been carrying so long, she'd forgotten it was there. Eli. Yeah. Is it really over? He wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her safety, but he'd never been good at comfortable lies. The hard part's over, but there's still 60 days until the final hearing, still an investigation to get through, still her. Yeah, still her. Grace nodded slowly. She won't stop. She's never stopped at anything she wanted. Neither have I. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting. Miguel and Elena were waiting on the porch. When they saw the wagon coming, Elena crossed herself and started crying. "We heard," Miguel said, helping Grace down. "Word travels fast. It's not final yet. But it's something. It's a start." That night they ate dinner together, all of them around the big table that had sat empty for 4 years. Elena had cooked for an army, and Grace ate like she'd never seen food before. "Slow down," Eli said. "It's not going anywhere." "I know, She looked at her plate. "I just want to remember this, in case." "In case what?" "In case it doesn't last." Eli set down his fork. "Grace, look at me." She did. "I know you've learned not to trust good things. I know every time something felt safe, someone came and took it away. But this is different. I'm different." "How do you know?" "Because I made a choice. The night I found you, I made a choice to fight for you. And I don't take back my choices. Not ever." She studied his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, looking for the crack. She didn't find one. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." 3 days later, the investigation began. Sheriff Dalton came to the ranch with a man from Helena, a federal investigator named Warren. Gray suit, gray eyes, gray disposition. He asked questions for 2 hours and wrote everything down in a leather notebook. "The financial records Mrs. Sullivan provided are compelling," Warren said finally. "But we need more. Bank statements, transfer documents, proof that Mrs. Shaw personally directed the embezzlement." "Where do we get that?" "The bank, which is a problem since Vernon Mills runs the bank and he's been friends with Mrs. Shaw for 20 years. Eli's jaw tightened. "So we're stuck." "Not necessarily. There's another avenue." Warren leaned forward. "The child mentioned hidden documents. Papers her father kept. Do you know where they are?" Eli looked at Grace, who was sitting in the corner listening. "She remembers a hiding place. In the mine. We haven't had a chance to look yet." "Then I suggest you look soon. If Thomas Whitmore kept records of his dealings with Mrs. Shaw, they could be the key to everything." After Warren left, Eli sat with Grace in the front room. "You ready to go to the mine?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I haven't been there since Papa died. Since the accident." "I know." "They said the tunnel collapsed, that he was trapped, that by the time they dug him out," her voice broke. "I didn't even get to say goodbye." Eli took her hand. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "No." She wiped her eyes. "Papa wanted me to find those papers. He told me about them for a reason. If they can help stop her, if they can make sure she never hurts anyone again." She looked at him. "Then I have to try. We'll go tomorrow, together. Promise?" "Promise." They set out at dawn. The Silver Hill mine was 5 miles east, up a winding trail that hadn't been maintained since the accident. The going was slow. Eli led Grace's horse, picking their way through fallen branches and loose rock. Grace was silent the whole way, her face pale, her hands tight on the reins. When the mine entrance came into view, she stopped. "I can't." "Yes, you can." I can see where it happened. The rocks. The... She was shaking. Papa was in there. He was in there, and I couldn't help him. And... Eli dismounted, walked to her horse, looked up at her. Grace, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone. She wiped her face, waited. The day Hannah died, I knew something was wrong. I felt it. All morning, this weight in my chest, this feeling that I should go home. But I didn't. I stayed in town, finished my business, told myself I was imagining things. His voice cracked. I wasn't imagining things. She needed me, and I wasn't there. And I've spent 4 years wondering what would have happened if I'd listened, if I'd gone home, if I'd trusted what I felt instead of what made sense. Grace was looking at him now, really looking. The guilt doesn't go away, Eli continued. It doesn't get smaller, but it can become something else, something useful. It can remind us to be braver next time, to trust ourselves, to never again ignore what our hearts are telling us. He held out his hand. Your heart brought you to my gate. Your heart kept you alive through that blizzard. Your heart told you to trust me when you had no reason to. Trust it one more time, Grace. Trust it enough to go into that mine and find what your papa left for you. She looked at his hand, at the mine entrance, at the rocks that marked where her father had died. Then she took a breath, and she took his hand. They went in together. The mine was dark and cold. Eli carried a lantern. The light threw strange shadows on the walls as they moved deeper into the tunnel. Grace led the way. Her steps were uncertain at first, but the deeper they went, the more confident she became. Papa brought me here once, right after Mama died. He said this mine was my future, my inheritance. He said as long as I had it, nobody could ever take everything from me. He was right. He was wrong too. Aunt Cordelia took it anyway. She made me sign papers I didn't understand. Said they were just formalities. Grace's voice hardened. I was 7. I didn't know what formalities meant. I just wanted her to stop looking at me like I was in the way. They reached a fork in the tunnel. Grace stopped. Left, she said. The room is on the left. They turned. The tunnel narrowed. The ceiling dropped. Eli had to duck to keep from hitting his head, and then they were there. A small chamber carved out of the rock. A heavy metal door rusted but intact. Grace walked to it slowly, her hand trembling as she touched the handle. Papa showed me how to open it. There's a trick. She pressed something Eli couldn't see. The door groaned and swung inward. Inside a wooden box, old, weathered, locked with a padlock that had seen better days. Do you know the combination? It's my birthday. Papa said he chose it, so I'd always remember that I was the most important thing. She turned the dial. 4 numbers. The lock clicked open. Inside the box papers, stacks of them, letters, contracts, ledgers, and at the very bottom a leather journal. Grace picked it up. Her hands were shaking. Papa's handwriting. Eli took the box of papers. We'll go through everything, but first let's get out of here. Get somewhere safe. They were almost to the entrance when they heard voices. Eli stopped, held up his hand. Grace froze behind him. 2 voices, male, coming from outside. Said she'd pay triple if we made it look like an accident. Another accident, in the same mine, that's too convenient. You want convenient or you want paid? Shaw's got money, more than either of us will ever see, and all she wants is the girl. What about the rancher? Him too if necessary, but the girl first. She's the witness. She's the problem. Eli's blood went cold. He pressed Grace against the tunnel wall, covered her mouth with his hand. Her eyes were huge, terrified. Stay here, he breathed. Don't move. Don't make a sound. She nodded. He set down the box, drew his pistol, moved toward the entrance. The 2 men were just outside, hired hands by the look of them. Rough, armed. The kind of men who did dirty work for dirty money. Eli stepped into the light. "Morning, gentlemen." They spun, reached for their guns. "I wouldn't." They froze. "I've got about 60 head of cattle that depend on me being a good shot. Want to test whether I am—" The taller one, big scar across his cheek, held up his hand slowly. "Easy, mister. We're just looking around. No trouble." "You're on private property, the Whitmore claim, and you're talking about making things look like accidents." Eli's voice was flat, dangerous. "I'd say that's trouble." The shorter one reached for his gun anyway. Eli fired. The bullet took him in the shoulder. He screamed and went down. The tall one backed up, hands high. "Don't shoot. I'm done. I'm done." "Who sent you?" "I can't. She'll kill me. I'll kill you right now if you don't answer." The man's face crumpled. "Shaw. Cordelia Shaw. She came to us 2 days ago. Said the girl had something that belonged to her. Said we needed to get it back, whatever it took." "Where is she now?" "I don't know. She said she'd meet us in town after. Said she'd have our money." Eli heard hoofbeats in the distance, coming fast. "Get your friend and get out of here. And if I ever see either of you again, I won't aim for the shoulder." They ran. Eli went back for Grace. She was still pressed against the wall, shaking. "It's okay. They're gone." "She sent them. She sent them to kill us." "She tried. She failed." He picked up the box. "Come on. We need to get these papers to Warren before she tries again." They rode hard. The ranch was chaos when they arrived. Miguel met them at the gate, rifle in hand. "Boss, Ryder came an hour ago. Said Cordelia Shaw's disappeared. Left town before dawn. Nobody knows where she went." Eli helped Grace down. "Get everyone inside. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in who isn't family." "You think she's coming here?" "I think she's desperate. And desperate people do desperate things." He sent a rider to town with a message for Warren. Then he sat down at his desk and started going through the papers. What he found made his hands shake. Thomas Whitmore had been careful, meticulous. Every transaction recorded, every conversation documented. Letters between him and Cordelia going back years. Letters where she threatened him. Letters where she offered to buy the mine for a fraction of its worth. Letters where she mentioned her second husband's unfortunate accident and suggested Thomas might have one too if he didn't cooperate. And at the bottom of the stack, a letter dated 3 days before Thomas died. "I know what you're planning," Thomas had written. "I know about Robert. I know about the others. And I've hidden the proof where you'll never find it. If anything happens to me, if anything happens to my daughter, it will all come out. Every secret, every crime, every body you've buried." Eli stared at the words. Every body you've buried. Not a figure of speech. Not a metaphor. Cordelia Shaw was a murderer. Grace. She was sitting by the fire reading her father's journal. She looked up. "Did your father ever talk about your Uncle Robert, about how he died?" Her face went pale. "He said it was an accident, a fall from his horse, but—" She stopped. "But he didn't believe it. He told me once that Aunt Cordelia had a way of making problems disappear. He said some problems were people. He was trying to protect you. That's why he hid these papers. That's why he documented everything. And that's why she killed him." The words hung in the air. "The mine accident," Grace whispered. "Papa always checked the supports himself. He was careful. So careful. He said the mine was my future. He wouldn't have let anything happen to it. Unless someone made it happen." "She murdered him." Grace's voice broke. "She murdered him and made me live with her, and I didn't even know I didn't." Eli went to her, held her while she cried. Great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. "I ate at her table. I slept under her roof. And the whole time she was the one who... You didn't know. You couldn't have known." "But I should have. I should have seen it. Papa tried to tell me. He tried to warn me. And I was too stupid to understand. You were 7 years old. You were grieving. You were surviving. Eli pulled back, looked into her eyes. None of this is your fault. Not one single bit of it. Then whose fault is it? Hers. Only hers. Grace wiped her face. Her eyes were red, but something in them had hardened. I want her to pay. I want her to lose everything the way I lost everything. I want her to know what it feels like. She will. Promise? I promise. Warren arrived at dusk with 2 federal marshals. He read through the documents in silence. His face grew grayer with every page. This is enough, he said finally. This is more than enough. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder. If these letters are authentic, they're in her own hand. Then Cordelia Shaw is going to prison for a very long time. He looked up. Assuming we can find her. She's disappeared. Vanished. Her house is empty. Her bank account's been cleaned out. She had a bag packed and a horse saddled before anyone knew she was gone. Eli's stomach dropped. She's running. Looks like it. We've got men watching the roads, the train station. She won't get far. But she did. 3 days passed. No sign of Cordelia. No word. No sighting. The town was on edge. People looked over their shoulders, locked their doors at night, whispered about what she might do, where she might be. Eli barely slept. He kept Grace close, never let her out of his sight. Miguel and the ranch hands took turns standing watch. On the 4th night it happened. Eli woke to the smell of smoke. He was out of bed and running before his mind caught up with his body. The hallway was filling with gray clouds. He could hear Elena screaming somewhere, Miguel shouting. "Grace!" He burst into her room. Empty. The window was open, cold air rushing in, and on the bed a note. "If you want her back, come alone. The old church. Midnight. Bring the papers." Eli's heart stopped. He looked at the note, at the empty bed, at the window that led out into darkness. Cordelia had Grace. The next hour was chaos. Miguel wanted to gather the men, storm the church, take Cordelia by force. "She'll kill her," Eli said. "The moment she sees anyone but me, she'll kill her. You can't go alone. It's suicide. I don't have a choice. Boss, she has Grace." Eli's voice cracked. "She has my daughter." The word hung in the air. My daughter. He hadn't said it before, hadn't let himself think it. But it was true. Grace was his daughter, not by blood, not by law, by choice, by love, by every moment of the past 6 weeks that had changed him from a dead man walking into someone who had a reason to live. "I'm going," he said, "alone, and when I come back, I'm bringing her with me." Miguel looked at him for a long moment. "Then take this." He pressed something into Eli's hand. A small pistol. "Fits in your boot, just in case." Eli nodded, tucked it away. "If I'm not back by dawn, you'll be back. But if I'm not, you'll be back." Miguel's voice was fierce. "Because that little girl needs you, and you don't let down people who need you. Not anymore." Eli rode out at 11. The old church sat on a hill east of town, abandoned years ago when the new one was built. Nothing left but stone walls and a broken steeple, a skeleton against the winter sky. He tied his horse at the bottom of the hill, walked the rest of the way on foot. The papers were in a satchel over his shoulder. The door was open. He stepped inside. Cordelia was waiting. She stood at the altar, Grace in front of her. A knife at the girl's throat. In the dim light, her face was barely human. All the pretense gone. All the masks stripped away. "Mr. McCade, so good of you to come." "Let her go." "The papers first." Eli held up the satchel. "Let her go and they're yours." "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what's in those papers? Once they're in the court's hands, I'm finished. Prison. The gallows. Everything I've built, everything I've done, all for nothing." "Then what do you want?" "I want to disappear. I want money and time and a head start. I want to ride out of this territory and never come back." Her grip on Grace tightened. "And I want her to come with me." "No. She's my insurance. As long as I have her, you won't follow. You won't send the marshals. You won't do anything except let me go." "I can't do that." "Then she dies." Cordelia pressed the knife closer. A thin line of red appeared on Grace's neck. "Right here, right now, and you'll watch." Grace's eyes found Eli's. Terrified, but not hopeless. There was something else there. Trust. "Don't," Grace whispered. "Don't give her what she wants. Papa didn't. He died rather than let her win." "Shut up." Cordelia yanked her back. "Your father was a fool. He could have had everything. Instead, he had principles. Look where that got him." "It got him remembered," Grace said. "It got him loved. What do you have?" Cordelia slapped her. Hard. Grace's head snapped to the side. Eli stepped forward. "Don't move." The knife was back at Grace's throat. "One more step, and I'll do it. I swear to God, I'll do it." "You won't. You don't know what I'll do. You don't know what I've done. The things I've had to do to survive in this world. Men like you, you're born with everything. Money, land, respect. I had nothing. I had to take everything I have." "And how many people did you kill to take it?" Cordelia laughed, harsh, broken. "Enough. More than enough. But they were all standing in my way. All of them. Robert with his conscience, Thomas with his suspicions, and this little brat with her inheritance that should have been mine. You married Robert for his money. I married Robert because I was starving, because I was 20 years old and alone, and the only currency a woman has in this world is her face and her body. I used what I had, and when he was gone, I used what he left." Her voice cracked. "You think I wanted this? You think I dreamed of being a murderer? I dreamed of safety, of security, of never being hungry again, and every time I got close, someone stood in my way, so I removed them. And now I'm tired." Cordelia's hand was shaking. The knife trembled at Grace's throat. "I'm so tired of fighting, of pretending, of wearing masks for people who'd spit on me if they knew the truth." "Then stop." "I can't. Don't you understand? I can't stop. If I stop, I die. In prison. On the gallows. Surrounded by people who hate me." Tears were running down her face now. "At least this way I choose. At least this way I have control." "You're not in control. You're terrified. You've been terrified your whole life." "Shut up. That's why you hurt Grace. That's why you hurt everyone. Because fear is the only thing you know how to feel." "I said shut up. Grace isn't your enemy. She's not standing in your way. She's just a child who's already lost everything, just like you did once." Cordelia froze. "You were hungry once. Alone. Afraid. And someone should have helped you. Someone should have protected you. Instead, you learned to protect yourself, no matter the cost." Eli took a slow step forward. "I'm not going to pretend I understand what you've been through. I'm not going to say you didn't have reasons. But Grace doesn't deserve to pay for your pain. She doesn't deserve to die because the world was cruel to you." Another step. "Let her go. Let her walk out that door. And then we can talk about what happens next. Just you and me." Cordelia's hand was shaking harder now. The knife wavered. "You'll send me to the gallows." "Maybe, but at least you'll face it standing up. Not hiding, not running, not dragging a child down with you." A long moment passed. Then slowly Cordelia lowered the knife. Grace broke free, ran to Eli. He caught her, pulled her behind him. "Go," he said. "Run. Don't look back." Grace hesitated. "Go." She ran. Eli faced Cordelia alone. She was standing at the altar, the knife hanging loose in her hand. The fire had gone out of her eyes. What remained was something that might have been relief. "You were right," she said quietly. "I am tired." "Then stop. It's over." "It's been over for a long time. I just didn't know it." She looked at the knife. Thomas knew. That's why he hid the papers. He knew I'd never stop. That the only way to beat me was to outlast me. To leave the truth where I couldn't destroy it. He was protecting his daughter. He was protecting everyone from me. Cordelia's voice broke. "Even me." She raised the knife, not toward Eli, toward herself. "Don't. It's better this way. No trial, no gallows, no more pretending. That's not your choice to make. It's the only choice I have left." The knife flashed. Eli moved. He caught her wrist. They struggled. The blade sliced his arm, but he didn't let go. They fell together, hit the ground hard, and the knife skittered away across the stone floor. Cordelia sobbed. Great broken sounds that didn't seem human. She lay there not fighting anymore, just crying, and Eli held her down and waited for the marshals he knew Miguel had sent, despite his orders. They arrived 10 minutes later. They took Cordelia away in chains. She didn't resist, didn't speak, just walked to the wagon with her head down and her eyes empty. Grace was waiting outside. When Eli emerged, bleeding exhausted, she ran to him, threw her arms around his waist, and held on like she'd never let go. "You came back." "I told you I would." "I know, but—" Her voice broke. "But people say things they don't mean all the time." "I meant it." He knelt down, looked into her eyes. "I meant every word, and I always will." She was crying. He was crying too. Neither of them tried to hide it. "Can we go home now?" Eli stood, took her hand. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home." The weeks that followed moved like water finding its path. Cordelia Shaw was taken to Helena for trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Thomas Whitmore's papers, Martha Sullivan's testimony, the letters in Cordelia's own hand confessing to things that made the prosecutor go pale when he read them. She didn't fight it. The woman who had clawed her way up from nothing, who had lied and stolen and killed to build her empire of respectability, simply stopped. She sat in her cell and waited for the end. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, she didn't flinch. When the sentence came life imprisonment, she nodded once, like she'd expected it all along. Eli didn't go to the trial. He had more important things to do. The final custody hearing was scheduled for April 15th, 2 months after the night at the church. Judge Hollister presided again. But this time, there was no opposition, no lawyers arguing against them, no threats hanging over their heads, just Eli and Grace sitting side by side, waiting. "Mr. McCade." Judge Hollister looked at him over his spectacles. "In my 30 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of custody cases. Most of them are messy, complicated, full of people fighting over children like property." He paused. This case was messy too, but for different reasons. Because somewhere in all that mess, something rare happened. A man chose to fight for a child who wasn't his. Not because the law required it, not because blood demanded it, but because it was right. Grace's hand found Eli's under the table. "The evidence before me is clear. Grace Whitmore has thrived in Mr. McCade's care. She's healthy, she's happy, she's healing from wounds that would have broken most adults." Hollister's voice softened. "And every witness I've spoken to, teachers, doctors, neighbors, says the same thing. That child has found something she lost, a family." He picked up his gavel. "It is the ruling of this court that full legal custody of Grace Elizabeth Whitmore be granted to Elijah James McCade. Furthermore, upon Mr. McCade's petition, and with the child's consent, I approve the legal adoption of Grace Elizabeth Whitmore henceforth to be known as Grace Elizabeth McCade." The gavel came down. Grace let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Eli couldn't speak. couldn't move, couldn't do anything except hold the hand of the little girl who was now legally and forever his daughter. "Congratulations, Mr. McCade." Hollister smiled, the first smile Eli had ever seen on the man's face. "Take good care of her." "I will, Your Honor, I will." They walked out of the courthouse into April sunshine. The whole town seemed to be waiting on the steps. Miguel and Elena, Benjamin Cole, Father Ashford, Doc Jensen, who looked like he might cry, Martha Sullivan, who actually was crying, even Henderson from the general store, hat in hand, looking sheepish. "Well," Miguel called out, "don't keep us waiting." Grace looked up at Eli. He nodded. "I'm Grace McCade now," she said. The cheer that went up could probably be heard in Helena. People crowded around them, shaking hands, offering congratulations. Women who had whispered about Eli for years now smiled at him like he was a long-lost friend. Men who had crossed the street to avoid him now clapped him on the shoulder. It should have felt hypocritical. Maybe it was. But Grace was laughing, really laughing for the first time since Eli had known her. And that sound was worth more than all the apologies in the world. Father Ashford pushed through the crowd. "I've been asked to invite you both to a celebration dinner at the church hall this evening. The ladies' auxiliary has been cooking since dawn." "We couldn't." "You could, and you should." Ashford's eyes were warm. "This town failed that little girl for a long time. Let us start making amends." Eli looked at Grace. "What do you think?" She considered it. That serious expression she got when she was weighing options. Too old for 8 years, but getting younger every day. "Can Elena bring her empanadas?" Ashford laughed. "I'll make sure of it." The dinner was held in the church hall, and the whole town turned out. Tables lined up end to end. Enough food to feed an army. People Eli hadn't spoken to in years came up to introduce themselves again like they were meeting for the first time, because in a way they were. Grace sat at the head table, looking slightly overwhelmed, but mostly happy. The Miller children had adopted her instantly, pulling her into their games, treating her like she'd always been part of their circle. Eli watched from across the room. "You did good." He turned. Benjamin Cole was standing beside him, a cup of punch in his hand. "I had help." "You had people who believed in you. That's not the same thing." Cole took a sip. "I've been practicing law for 5 years. This is the first case I've ever had where I felt like justice actually won." "Does it always feel like this?" "The winning, no. Usually it's quieter, more complicated." Cole smiled. "But this, a child saved, a monster stopped, a family made. This is what the law is supposed to be for." He raised his cup. "To justice, Mr. McCade, the real kind." "To justice." Later, Grace found him sitting alone on the church steps. The party was winding down inside. Voices and laughter drifting through the open windows. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. She sat down beside him without speaking. They stayed that way for a while. Father and daughter. Watching the day end. Eli. "Yeah. Do you think Papa knows about today?" Eli thought about that. "I think," he said slowly, "that the people we love don't really leave us. They become part of who we are. The lessons they taught us, the love they gave us, the way they made us feel safe." He looked at her. "Your Papa's in every good choice you make, every time you're brave, every time you trust someone even though it's scary. That's him, still with you, still protecting you." Grace's eyes filled. "I miss him. I know. But—" She wiped her face. "But I'm glad I have you now. Is that wrong? To be glad about something when I'm still sad about something else? That's not wrong. That's human." Eli put his arm around her. "We can hold both things at once, the grief and the gratitude, the missing and the finding. One doesn't cancel out the other." She leaned against his shoulder. "I love you, Eli." The words hit him like a lightning strike. "I love you too, Grace. I have since the night you stumbled into my gate and asked for one night of shelter. His voice cracked. "You're my daughter, not just on paper, in my heart, forever." She smiled. That rare, real smile that transformed her whole face. Forever's a long time. Not long enough. They sat there until the stars came out, until Miguel came to find them and say it was time to go home. They rode back to the ranch in the wagon, Grace asleep against Eli's shoulder, the horses knowing the way by heart. Home. It had never felt more like the right word. Spring came in hard after that. The snow melted. The creek ran high. The pastures turned from brown to green seemingly overnight. Eli had never noticed how beautiful the land was. He'd been too busy surviving to pay attention. Now he noticed everything. He noticed how Grace's face lit up when she saw the first wildflowers of the season. How she'd started humming while she did her chores, something she'd never done before. How she called the ranch home without hesitation, like it had always been hers. He noticed how the ranch hands had adopted her as a mascot. How Miguel's children treated her like a little sister. How Elena fussed over her hair and her clothes, and whether she was eating enough. He noticed how full his house felt now. Full of noise and laughter and small footsteps and questions about everything under the sun. "Eli, why do horses sleep standing up? Eli, how do you know when it's going to rain? Eli, can I learn to rope like Miguel? Eli, Eli, Eli." His name in her voice was the best sound in the world. In May, they went to the Silver Hill mine together. The investigation had cleared Thomas Whitmore's name completely. The accident that killed him had been sabotage arranged by Cordelia. The mine itself was safe, properly supported, worth more than anyone had realized. Grace stood at the entrance, looking at the dark tunnel that had haunted her dreams for almost a year. "I used to be so scared of this place. Are you still?" She thought about it. "No, now it's just sad, but not scary." She looked up at him. "Papa loved this mine. He said it was my future, my inheritance." "It is. When you're 21, it'll be yours. Every penny it earns between now and then goes into a trust. Nobody can touch it, not ever again." "What if I don't want it?" "Then you sell it, or give it away, or let it sit. It's your choice, Grace. That's what inheritance means, freedom to choose." She walked a few steps into the tunnel, touched the wall. "I want to do something with it, something Papa would have liked." "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but something good, something that helps people." She turned back to him. "Is that dumb?" "That's the opposite of dumb. That's the smartest thing I've ever heard." She smiled. "Can we go home now? Elena said she's making pie." "Apple. Cherry." "Then we better hurry." They rode home together, father and daughter, the sun warm on their backs, and the road stretching out ahead like a promise. The town changed after that spring. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily like a river slowly shifting its course. Henderson paid off his debt to the bank, the new bank run by honest men who didn't believe in holding notes over people's heads. He started extending credit to families who needed it the way his father had done before Vernon Mills and his kind had taken over. Martha Sullivan opened a small boarding house for women in trouble. Women running from bad situations, bad men, bad choices. She called it Second Chance House, and never turned anyone away. Father Ashford started a Sunday school for children, really teaching them, this time not just reciting catechism. Grace was his best student, asking questions that made him think harder than he had in years. Doc Jensen trained a young doctor from back east, passing on everything he knew before the consumption finally took him. He died in October, peacefully knowing the town would be cared for, and Josephine Rainwater was finally welcomed into the community. Not as an outsider tolerated for her skills, but as a neighbor, a friend, the woman who had spoken truth when truth was dangerous. Eli watched all of it happen and marveled at how quickly things could change when good people decided to be brave. On Grace's 9th birthday, they had a party at the ranch. 20 children came. Miguel's kids. The Miller children from town, whose parents had finally decided that the McCade Ranch was a place worth visiting. They played games in the yard, ate cake until they were sick, and ran around screaming with the pure joy of being young and alive and free. Grace was in the middle of it all, laughing, leading belonging. Eli stood on the porch watching. She's happy. He turned. Elena was beside him, a dish towel over her shoulder. She is. You're happy too. Don't try to deny it. I can see it in your face. Eli smiled, something he did easily now, without thinking about it. I am. Good. You deserve it. Elena patted his arm. Miss Hannah would be proud of you. She always said you had more love in you than you knew what to do with. Now you have somewhere to put it. You think she'd approve of Grace? I think she's the one who sent that child to your gate. Elena's eyes were bright. I think love doesn't die when people do. It just finds new ways to reach us. She went back inside. Eli stayed on the porch watching his daughter play, thinking about Hannah, about Thomas Whitmore, about all the people who weren't here, but whose love still shaped every moment. Maybe Elena was right. Maybe love was stronger than death. Maybe it found ways to keep giving, even when the givers were gone. That night after the party, after the children went home, and the dishes were washed, and the house was quiet, Grace came to find Eli in his study. He was sitting at his desk, looking at a photograph, Hannah young and beautiful on their wedding day. Grace climbed into the chair beside him. Is that your wife? Yes. She was pretty. She was. Inside and out. Grace studied the photograph. Do you think she'd like me? I know she would. She always wanted children. We tried for years before. He stopped. Before. I'm sorry. Don't be. I used to think losing her was the worst thing that could happen to me. I used to think I'd never recover, never be whole again. He looked at Grace. I was wrong. Wrong about what? Wrong about how healing works. I thought it meant going back to who I was before. But that's not it. Healing means becoming someone new. Someone shaped by the loss, but not destroyed by it. Someone who can still love, still hope, still choose to live even when living hurts. Grace was quiet for a moment. Papa used to say something like that. He said grief was love with nowhere to go, and the only cure was to find somewhere new to put it. Your papa was a wise man. He was. She yawned, suddenly exhausted from the long day. Eli? Yeah. I'm glad my grief found somewhere to go. I'm glad it found you. He pulled her into a hug, held her tight, breathed in the smell of cake frosting and wildflowers, and the particular sweetness of a child who has finally learned to trust. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. 3 years passed. Grace grew tall and strong and confident. She learned to ride to rope, to read ledgers and count cattle, and negotiate with stubborn merchants who tried to cheat her on grain prices. She went to school in town, made friends, got into occasional trouble, and came home every afternoon with stories that made Eli laugh until his sides hurt. The nightmares faded. The wariness slowly disappeared. The little girl who had been too scared to hope became a young woman who faced the world with open eyes and an open heart. Eli watched her grow and marveled at the transformation, not just in her, but in himself. He talked to neighbors now, went to church, joined the town council when they asked. The recluse who had hidden from the world for 4 years became someone people counted on, turned to trusted. All because a child had stumbled into his life and taught him that walls don't protect you from pain. They just keep you from the love that makes pain bearable. On the 3rd anniversary of that blizzard night, Grace found him at the gate. The same gate where he'd found her dying desperate, asking for one night. What are you doing out here? Remembering. She stood beside him, looking at the post where she'd collapsed. It feels like a lifetime ago. It was. A different lifetime. He put his arm around her shoulders. You were so small, so scared. I didn't know what to do. I just knew I couldn't leave you. Why? You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. Eli thought about that. I think sometimes we don't choose the moments that define us. They choose us. And when they come, all we can do is show up. Be present. Do what feels right even when we're scared, even when we don't know what happens next. Grace leaned against him. Papa used to say that choosing is what makes us human, that every day we choose who we want to be. Choose kindness or cruelty. Choose fear or courage. Choose to close our hearts or open them. He was right. He chose you. Before he died, he hid those papers because he knew someday I'd find someone worth trusting, someone who'd help me, someone who'd fight for me. Her voice wavered. He chose you for me, even though he never met you. Or maybe you chose me, walking through that blizzard, refusing to give up, finding my gate out of all the gates in the territory. Maybe we chose each other. Maybe that's how family works. Not blood, not law. Just two people deciding every day to belong to each other. Grace smiled. That radiant smile that made everything worthwhile. I like that. I like choosing you. I like choosing you too. They stood there at the gate as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that had no names. Father and daughter. Chosen family. Two people who had been broken and lost and alone, finding each other in the middle of a storm and deciding to hold on. The wind picked up cold with the promise of winter coming. Grace shivered. Let's go inside. Elena's making stew. You go ahead. I'll be right there. She squeezed his hand and ran toward the house, her laughter trailing behind her like music. Eli stayed a moment longer. He looked at the gate, at the spot where everything had changed, at the life he had now so different from the life he'd been living that it might as well be a different man standing here. Maybe it was. The man who had found Grace that night was dead, killed by love in the best possible way, replaced by someone who knew what mattered, someone who had learned that the hardest thing in the world wasn't losing people. It was letting yourself love them anyway. He touched the gatepost once a goodbye to who he used to be and turned toward the house, toward the light in the windows, toward the laughter and the warmth and the daughter who had given him back his life. Grace was waiting on the porch. Coming? Yeah, he smiled. I'm coming home. He walked toward her, leaving the past behind, stepping into a future he'd never imagined and couldn't imagine living without. And that night, sitting around the table with Grace and Elena and Miguel and all the people who had become his family, Eli McCade understood something he'd spent 4 years failing to learn. That grief doesn't end us. That love finds a way. That the family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into. And that sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to say yes when a small voice in the darkness asks for just one night. One night becomes a lifetime, a stranger becomes a daughter, and a broken man learns to be whole again. Not by forgetting what he lost, but by holding on to what he found.